Hi guys, here is Ina and welcome to my channel or welcome back to Watch Some of My Videos. Today I will talk to you about watering your orchids. I've done some research and apparently one of the things that people look for the most, it's about how to water your orchids or can I mist my orchids and some other questions that I will address during this video. If you grow orchids for a while, you probably know most of the things that I will talk to you about today. But if you just pass through a supermarket and saw a beautiful orchid and thought about, should I buy it? I don't know how to water it. Maybe this video is for you. If someone just give to you a beautiful orchid, again, this video is also for you. But if you also watch my videos and you enjoy it, why not to stay here and let's dive in and talk about some of these questions. I have a list here on my phone and I will go through them and I'll try to give you some examples as well. So let's start. So I will start with the main question, that is, how often my orchids should be watered? That's a very good question. We have some of us have houseplants. And usually we will water our houseplants maybe once a week or maybe 2-3 days. I don't have an exact answer for you. I'd say it depends. But let's go to some of general requirements. So houseplants can be thirstier than orchids, apart from cacti, succulents, but normal houseplants, they require more watering. I will show you some examples. My houseplants are very sad at the moment, but we're not talking about them. I didn't water them on time this week. I've been more than a week without watering my orchids and my houseplants. My houseplants suffered more. Orchids, however, because where I live now, I live in London and it's winter here. The weather is getting colder and colder and I have my heating on. It's not amazingly perfect for orchids because, and plants in general. The heating system will make the air slightly drier. However, all these orchids that we see in supermarket, they are adapted to our home environments. It's not their natural habitat, but they will do well with intermediate temperature that we find inside our homes, which is great. But how often do we water our orchids? I said that depends because if you live in a temperate climate like I do and you have winter now, for instance, some of our orchids will need to be watered maybe once a week or maybe it's 10 days. Some of our orchids maybe it's 6 days. But generally speaking, you need to look to the root system of your orchid. Let me grab one here for you. I have this one here. That's a new orchid that I haven't reported yet. So this one is a new orchid, came from that's the nursery pot, and the roots are green. Because the roots are green, it means that this orchid is not dry yet. So I can maybe keep it here under my growing lights for more 5 days and then water it. So when you notice that your orchids, especially Phalaenopsis, they start presenting the roots become gray. So then that's the time for you to water your orchid. So if the roots are flesh green, usually they don't need to be watered. Some of other orchids, such as Oncidiums, Cattleyas, and Dendrobiums. Dendrobiums are very common in supermarkets as well, but I'm not going to talk about Dendrobium nobile in this video, that's a different thing. But usually these plants, you can look at their pseudobulbs or their canes, and when you notice that they start to shrivel, to shrink a little bit, and that's time for you to water it because you will notice that you have some wrinkles on the pseudobulbs or on the cane. So your plant is definitely thirsty and it's time for you to water. Just to let you know, some of these plants, they can be evenly moist all the time and they grow well and fine. But just for a reference for people that don't know orchids very much, look to the leaves. If the leaves are floppy, limpy, time for you to water. If the roots are definitely gray, time for you to water. The pseudobulbs are wrinkled, time for you to water. There is no recipe, so I cannot tell you once a week or I cannot tell you 2 weeks. I can tell you that you need to observe your plant. I think that's the best answer that I can give you. I know that's not perfect because we all want to know an exact measure, but it's difficult because during summer, and spring and summer, we have warmer days that are lighter for longer. So your orchid will probably need more water or need to be watered more frequently. Now that's cold, they can go without water for longer because, it's cold. So the water is evaporating, they are transpirating less, which makes perfect sense. So that's my tip for you. So let's go to another question. Should I mist my orchid? That's another very common question. I would say no. If you're a home grower, if you grow your orchid inside a house, you don't have enough air movements, and your plants usually are potted up like this one, upright. They are not hanging on trees like they would do in nature. We don't have the same bacteria, fungi, air movement, temperature, and all that we find in their natural habitat. So when you mist your orchid, not only some of your flowers can develop some fungus infection, but also we can have some water trapped among the leaves of your orchid, and we can have infections that in the end, you can lose your plant. So you may have crown rot, stem rot. So I would say, generally speaking, don't mist your orchid. Only if you have very specific conditions, if your orchid is maybe mounted, you have an outdoor area and you want to mist the root of your orchid, different situation, different scenario. I don't have a mounted orchid. Here I'm talking about these potted orchids that we buy in supermarket and that we grow inside our home. Next question. Can I water my orchid with tap water? The answer is yes. I know that some of us have harder water. What that means that we have more salts because of the way that the water is treated to come to our homes. If your water is a hard water, we will have more salts, therefore it can affect some roots of some orchids. But I would say that these orchids that we find everywhere around us, they are okay if we water them with tap water. I live in London. My water is definitely hard. I cannot filter my water or capture water from the rain to water them. Would be ideal, would be perfect. Doesn't go with my style of living. So I need to water them with tap water, and so far so good. Most of my orchids are completely alive and thriving. I have like almost 200 orchids, and that's the way that I go with it. If it's in your area, if you can measure the salt and you see that it will water, it's not hard, it's even better. If you have conditions to grab rainwater and water your plants, even better. But I know that's not for everyone. So if the only thing that you have available is tap water, go for it. I think your Phalaenopsis will survive and will enjoy it as well. And that's what I can tell you. I know that some people will say otherwise, that they have osmosis water, especially for some species. I know there are orchids that are more sensitive. Some of my viewers said they use one of those water filters, I write the name here, to filter water for you to drink at your house. One of these plastic ones that are available and affordable. I have never measured the amount of salt on the water when I filter, so I don't know, but that could be an option. You can investigate that as well. But if that's too much for you, go with tap water. I think your orchids, most of them at least, will be fine. Some of them may not be the happiest, but maybe this orchid's not for you. So let's go to the next one. Should I water from the top? Should I water from the bottom? How I water my orchids? That's also a video. I have a video about that as well, link down below. But just as a short answer, I would always, if you're a beginner, water from below. If you have your orchid coming in a pot like that, maybe you have a decorative pot. I'm going to show you an example. So this one is a new orchid, newly potted. As you can see here, there is a plastic pot, there is a decorative pot. You can fill the outer pot with water, put your plant in there, leave it there for 10 minutes or so, remove it, throw the water away, and your plant is watered. Why? Because when you water from below, you have less chance of damaging the crown or the stem of your orchid, and again, having some infection that will kill your orchid. If you have lots of experience and if you want to be very careful and water just around your plant, you can do that. You can experiment with that. I'm only telling you to water from below because it's safer to do so. But if you're an experienced grower, you know that you can find and discover your own way of watering your orchid. Let's go to the next question. How I water my orchids. I have here this big can that I use to water my orchid. It's very helpful. This one I think holds like 4 liters of water. How I do it, I'm late. I should have watered this weekend. I couldn't. It was so busy. Today's Monday. I'm watering today and I'm gonna water next Tuesday because I'm traveling on Wednesday. So I'm gonna fill that with water. I usually fill with some tap water. I add some fertilizer. I add some orchid fertilizer that I find locally. Is this one. I can tell you each is an NPK fertilizer 30-10-10. So it has nitrogen, you're gonna have phosphorus, you're gonna have potassium, and some other micronutrients and have some other micronutrients. It has nitrogen, 30% of nitrogen, and all the things that I told you. This one you can find locally in garden centers here in the UK. I usually will add the amount that's recommended on the back of the pot and also on the label. So always add the amount that you find on the label. Add this water and I will water my orchid. I use fertilizer maybe each 2 weeks, and when I notice that I forgot for a while, I use it weekly because I also add some slow release fertilizer to their pots because sometimes I have lots of plants. But if you don't do it, if you don't have lots of plants, try to fertilizer as much as you can, and then when it's winter, you maybe can have a break with the fertilizer, but with the cooler months, otherwise, try at least each 2 weeks. It's going to be good. It will make your plants grow much healthier. But yes, that's it. I will fill my pot with water and I will go just each plant one by one, placing it there. Because I have lots of plants and I have a specific way that I potted all of them. I usually don't water from above. I will just adding a little bit of water in all of my pots because they have some sphagnum moss that will help to keep all my orchids evenly moist, but I have to be careful because I live in a cool country. So if you are a beginner, just grab your can of water, fill the outer pot with water, let it soak there, and your orchids should be good to go. That was my last tip for today. Let me put this down, and I hope it answered some of your questions. And I hope you enjoy your orchids as much as I do. That's it, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.